Welcome to the Papers Podcast. We are back here with you to review for you the medical education literature. And I have with me, as always, John.
Hi, everybody.
Lara.
Hiya.
And Jason has a good paper for us today.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. We're recording on Friday the 13th. And it's been a bizarre day because Lara's inventing stuff in our other episode. John's been going through a case of Boost. I think he's been working out either that or he's on some sort of amphetamines. I'm not sure, but
I noticed that too.
It's been impressive.
You got to get your protein in, Jason. You got to get it in at all times. It's a constant drip.
Yeah, that's what I tell my patients of 80, John.
Well, I have the physique of an 80-year-old, I think is the answer.
Those are in other countries. Boost is a dietary supplement. All right.
Doesn't taste very good.
There you go. Everybody's tried it. Okay, so if you're listening to this podcast, it's the Papers Podcast. It's about health professions, education, papers. And you're probably engaged in health profession scholarship. You've probably, either you're starting out in your career and you're getting some tips, or you're a senior person and you're mentoring others around publications. So my question for my co-host here, and you got to be super brief, is how did you learn how to write? And we're going to go John, Linda, Lara. And you got to be like Chris, but you can't tell us your life story. And John, I know your life story, so don't tell that part. But John, how did you learn how to write med ed publication?
By writing.
Oh, that's a crisp answer. Very elegant. Linda?
By writing with others.
Oh, all right, Lara?
Laura Lingard was my thesis supervisor.
Boom.
Enough said.
Yeah, enough said. Guru. So I've entitled this podcast somewhat cheekily with a tribute to Hollywood as what does it take to make a Chris Watling? I guess I could have done being Chris Watling or something like that. So this is about faculty development and infrastructure to support educational scholarship, a scoping review on author development. The authors are Cameron, Crowther, and Wang. And this is in academic medicine this month. It's January 2023. And the idea is just thinking about all those stressors and all of you mentor others. I know because you're senior in your health professions education career. And isn't it heartbreaking to watch somebody who's been frustrated by getting a project published? And some people, you must have experienced this, some people just fade away. They just get so frustrated that their first journal they target doesn't work. And maybe their second journal they target doesn't work. And reviewer two, who's often me, is really critical of their methods. Lara says the scale has no constructivist grounded theory behind it. And then they quit and they go back to pure clinical and MedEd has lost all of their ideas they might have contributed to our field. That always breaks my heart. So how do we support developing authors for success? That's what this paper is all about. There is a body of literature about barriers. All of you can think of all the long list of barriers that it's actually like swimming uphill to really publish a paper. And there are a few papers about interventions, but what we need is a scoping review to put it all together. So the authors set out to characterize faculty development programs and educational scholarship, namely author development initiatives in academic medicine. So dear colleagues, have you participated or set up an author development program that you want to give us a snippet of? But it's got to be a snippet. So let's go Linda, Lara, John.
So participated in, yes, interestingly enough, not only at MedEd meetings, but at my specialty meetings. Being involved in developing, yes, we certainly have had one at McGill, which is actually one of the papers in this study.
I've had I have offered them and I have taken them. The one thing that I'd like to highlight is that the writing workshop that Lorelei Lingard has developed out of the University of Western Ontario with colleagues there, including Mark Goldschmidt, Chris Watling, Syra Cristancho. I attended one of their sessions and it was really well done. I can't say enough good things about it.
I've participated in writing retreats where you have peer review and help. I haven't found that process to be helpful beyond the social pressure of getting stuff done by the time you meet for dinner. And so you stare at that computer screen or blank page saying, I will have something on there so that at cocktails, I'll have something to talk about. My best anecdote is in grad school, my stats professor, let me underline that part. My stats professor gave me a copy of Strunk and White, which listener, if you don't know what Strunk and White is basically a book on grammar. So when the stats prof is telling you, you better learn a bit about grammar, you know that I needed a bit of practice. And if you read anything I write now, you know that I haven't learned much in the interim.
That's awesome. Similarly, our department has a mentoring program that helps people publish. And our department also offers to have a retreat for all the scientists once a year. They go to a hotel out in the wilderness. They go to Montebello, for those who know Canada. And they stay there for several days. And yeah, there's a big expectation that every time you meet as a group, you must have advanced one or more papers. And then there's a round of reviews, and then you go back. And so they're supposed to leave there that week. So they justify the expense from their grants. They leave there with multiple papers written, and they do it every year. So it's kind of a killer method. It's like a sprint. Okay. So the authors conducted a scoping review. Like, what are the lessons that are published that are out there? And if you're a listener, tell us what you've experienced, what worked for you, what didn't. I definitely could have used more as a early career person to improve my writing. The question is, what interventions have been used to help faculty publish educational scholarship? They justified the choice of a scoping review as the current state of the literature does not include enough controlled studies that are easily comparable. In fact, there were none. And thus does not allow for a systematic review or a meta. They used the Prisma scoping review extension as their guide. They did not mention Arksy or O'Malley and did not reference them. That's such a faux pas for the Papers podcast. They did the usual searches. I'm just going to summarize a little bit of the methods because I'm going to ask you whether or not you think they're adequate. They looked at 4 major databases: PubMed, Scopus, Google Scholar, ProQuest. They included only English papers. And to get in, you had to have formal instruction for medical educators in scholarly writing. They excluded anything about how to do research in general, anything that's not focused on publishing, not focused on formal instruction to do that, no full text available, and certain article types, so letters, reviews, and abstracts. They used snowballing, which they called pearl forming. I've never heard it called that before. You guys might have. I'm seeing everybody else nodding. Snowballing from reference lists to find other potential papers. All of that's pretty standard. They describe appropriate extraction and consensus methods. I like how they nicely describe their piloting and refinement of their extraction tool. I thought that was classy. There is a teeny tiny small reflexivity paragraph that proposed that they are immersed in this topic in a pragmatic way, which is much better than the reflexivity paragraph that Lara reviewed on another paper earlier today. Just saying. Maybe it was just Lara's review. I don't know.
Moving on.
I'll just pause there. So what do you think of their methods? It's a scoping review. Is it on target? Lara, John, Linda.
I'm going to declare this a very, it is right there, middle of the road, fine. There are weaknesses, as there are in so many papers. And of course, that's also part of the fact that we only have so many words in the journal. So, you get in what you get in. But I'm always going to say that if you're doing a scoping review and you don't cite Arksy and O'Malley and the Levac extension, or at least address that it has those kinds of roots, my first fear is that you've not read them. And then that means that I'm now worried that you don't know what the purpose of this review is. But I think these authors do understand that. It's relatively clear. They didn't do the stakeholder feedback session. I always feel that that's important. But what I really do want to give them a thumbs up for is I had never heard of citation pearl growing. And so that's, love a new term, love a new concept, going to dig that baby up and see what I can figure out from there and add that to the old toolbox of things I can do. Looking forward to it.
Can I just comment on Lara's comments? I think all that's legit. I wondered about not going back to stakeholders and doing checking. And one of the things was this is a scope from the beginning of databases to something like 2014. So maybe some of these people don't even work anymore, and maybe some of them have passed on. I'm not sure it was possible to do scoping.
Yeah, but they said that the paper, the first paper, the earliest published was in 1995. So
that's so old. That's like John's birthday. That's so old. Go, John.
I just need to say this first out loud because everyone else got to say it. Citation pearl growing. That's awesome. Love that. 2, mostly because it irritates the pants off Lara. I love it that they use the Prisma extension. So Laura Roberts, who's the EIC at Academic Medicine, and me disagree with you, Lara. So there you go.
I can take it.
The problem I actually have with how they set their inclusion-exclusion criteria is I think they did it wrong. They said, this is all about how to be an author.
Yes,
but
it's
then
about
they said
writing.
it had to be an author for a research paper, which can be a very technical type of writing. I've worked with different author groups where you farm everything out and you put together this camel horse made by committee type of paper that's a Frankenstein monster. I've done stuff where it's very, this is the structure and this is the template. Thou shalt insert any adjective you want within the template, but don't touch it. And that's never artful or interesting writing. And so you can imagine writing commentaries, writing second order reviews, writing editorials. Those are impactful type of writing that requires a different type of elegance and approach. And in fact, the hardest part of research is not the research report, it's the conducting the research. It's understanding the methodology, it's understanding what the literature says. It's all that part. And so I find this is it's a funny thing. We did a scoping review on how to write research reports, not how to write. And so it's a bit of a bait and switch from the title. And I would have liked to, let's just talk about how to write as an academic and then include all the stuff that they excluded, or let's talk about how to do research and then exclude all the stuff about writing and add all the stuff they talked about, how to do research fellowships and graduate degrees. And so I don't know if I care about about the results that you're going to tell me, Jason.
John, you're making everybody else mad, so that you're obviously doing something right. And also, I think you won a prize for the most mixed metaphors in one day.
Right?
I'm going for it. It's
Horse
Friday
and
13th.
camel something? Oh my God.
Yeah, I think you're up to 25. I think it's really impressive. Okay, Linda, you were grimacing to John's brilliance.
Yes,
what was
and
going
I
on?
will try and be brief. First of all, I think the title said what they were going to do. Yes, they talk about a scoping review of author development, but earlier on in the title, they talk about supporting educational scholarship. Okay, there are other kinds of papers, but I think in this case, they're being fairly clear. They want to look at writing for research. And they probably would have looked at slightly different papers had they gone bigger than this. I think everyone said everything else on this.
Okay, great. Let's do results. Like I say, it's a pretty crisp paper. So Cameron et al. Found 630 unique papers from the databases. They added a big number. This is a big number, 293 through snowballing. So their total where they started from was 923 at the top of their flow diagram.
I'd prefer you to call that citation programming, just because it's cooler.
I like snowballing. I'm northern, okay? Don't live in Hawaii. They excluded 885. They reviewed 38. They kept 20. That's 2% of their process. There you go. That described 18 programs. I like how they did this next bit in the results. They organized their descriptions of the programs are using SIP as a framework. How nice. It's so elegant. Context, input, process, product, if you remember that from ancient times. Programs were usually, this couple highlights, were usually sponsored by professional society, a university, medical school, a department, or all of the above. There was a wide range of participants from 3 to 172. 78% were focused on, by the way, 3 to 172 also is our various number of fans that write into the podcast supporting the various hosts there today. Sorry, John. 78% were focused on educational scholarship, while it was just a component of other programs. So some programs were like, here's how to get promoted, and session 5 is on educational scholarship type thing. In terms of expectations, some of them were show up with a pulse, and others were you must disseminate scholarship. That's pretty true of my school too. There's variety like that. The programs were like crazy heterogeneous, right? This is over a long period of time. With respect to processes, time, resources, everything. They varied from 6 weeks to 3 years, 120-hour commitment to be part of this program. I hope they handed out beer. Group and independent work were the main methods, but also mentoring, didactics, and fellowships. Success factors included leader support, a culture that values ed scholarship, mentors, and resources. We've heard that so many times. And outcomes looked at satisfaction, self-efficacy, scholarly products, and career measures. And interestingly to me, none of them touched professional identity formation, which I think is key. So quick comments on the results that struck you. John, Lara, Linda.
The figure 2, I think, nicely synthesized everything they have there. Some of their images, I think, were just generic because I can't figure out how the image relates to some of their, they have a ship's wheel, which I have no idea how that's a culture thing. But it puts together nicely. I would say, though, that these are all to be expected. I could take out the word author development for educational scholarship and put anything else that an academic might do, and it all makes sense. You need a positive culture, you need resources, you need some determination of the effectiveness of it. And then the process is all around experiential learning and collaboration. That seems like fairly generic type of results. Nothing here that's surprising to me. It's organized in a nice way. I might steal this process and doctor it for any other kind of faculty development initiative I might want to use.
So for me, I have just a few points. One is that unfortunately, what the authors are telling us is that the literature is a kitchen sink. It's got everything in there: forks, spoons, knives, platters, whatever's. Everything's in there, which is not that surprising. But here's the point that I really want to make exceptionally clear to our audience right now, that this is a report of the developing of author skills, of writing skills for research. And what is perhaps the most important thing to remember in this moment is that successful research lives and dies by research methods and the rigor that you bring and the data you develop, the analysis you do. Yes, it needs to be well written to get published, but just because you write well doesn't mean the research is good. So
Amen.
I get really nervous when we start saying, oh, look, we taught you to write and now you're publishing. And I'm like, well, let's be careful here. You better be a good researcher, because writing skills is the last part of what needs to be excellent. The first part is the data, the research, the methods. So for me, one of the things that I'm a little bit cautious with this paper is they talk about the developing scholars. No. You talked about developing author skills. Scholars is a much broader term, and now you're talking about research methods, and none of these address that.
Do you get? I would give you an extra point on your score or your scale of whatever you're doing, because I 100% agree with what you just said.
Okay. I just, three very brief points. First of all, I really like the diagram, and I agree with John that it could be generalized to many things. Second, I recognize that there was a hugely heterogeneous group of interventions. It was a shame that they couldn't really link format with outcome, because what I'd really like to know is this format good for producing, better paper, more papers, more publications.
But it depends on what the methods are. If the data's crap, all the writing in the world ain't going to fix it.
Of course. I realize that.
Okay.
But so we don't know that yet. And the third thing is there was a little bit that was kind of buried in the discussion that I liked. It said that there was a positive impact across the spectrum of other markers of career development, which reflects a more holistic view of author development, that publications are not the only outcome of importance, and that scholarly writing can form the nidus for career growth in other realms. I'm not sure I'd say it would be a nidus. I would say it would be sort of a parallel thing. And I agree with you, Lara, that it's not a nidus if the research isn't good. However, they also then say several programs were embedded within education fellowships, and institutions may wish to place these programs within a wider infrastructure for fact ed, rather than just doing scholarly writing in isolation. But you might want to do something on developing a research question or having good research methods. So that's all part of what you would do.
That's awesome. Lara, did you want to add anything to that?
No, it's just that I said CRAP, and now I'm feeling badly.
That's okay. We're going to cut that. Actually, no, we're going to keep that in. I think that's very cute. Okay, so the authors concluded that all the published examples of author development programs, as variable as they were positive, and maybe that's a file drawer effect. They commented that some programs implied that author success involved developing skills and competencies, while others implied that success was through some sort of social learning progress, a journey with peers and mentors. That's certainly my lived experience. If you have people who suddenly, as an outcome measure of these programs, are taking on leadership positions, that's not about their writing, though it may help their academic standing. They said the bottom line was successful programs need resources, support, mentors, a culture that values health professions, education, scholarship, an experiential/social/skills embedded design, and impacts can be far ranging. So some of these are just so apple pie, right? They seem so straightforward. But anyway, I think this does add something. I think this shows the power of a scoping review to bring together in a single paper a heterogeneous body of literature. I think we would all agree on that. I think it's important that there are still questions about how to set up emerging HB scholars for success. And it can't be this tiny little piece of the puzzle, which we've emphasized a few times. there's still gaps in studies. I didn't see anything about professional identity formation, which I suspect is important. There's nothing about equity and diversity measures in this generation of papers. So there's lots more for people to work on. And correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there like this whole body of literature that about predicting publication success? I think one of them is, I think it's a Carol Bland paper. Correct me if I'm wrong in your mental list. I didn't pull it for this podcast, but it says the number of papers you publish in your lifetime is predicted by your age at first publication. Like the younger you are, if you're John and you're a genius, you publish when you're 11, you're in Lancet, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then another one
Is there
was
something bad that you're about to say about me because you've never been nice.
authors know that this is ironic. Our listeners know this is ironic. And then the last thing was, if you want to be a Nobel Prize winner, there's a whole body of literature that you should be working in the lab of a Nobel Prize winner. So who you work with is a big predictor.
Yep.
Let's do a quick round of votes. So on methodology, Linda, Lara, John, what do you think of this paper?
I'm going to give this a 3. I thought it was good. I actually had to read very carefully when I looked through the Prisma SCR checklist to see that everything was there. I think it could have been laid out a little bit more clearly so I knew things were there, but no major issues with it. It's in the middle of the road.
So this paper did give me some cause for pause in the method. So while I would have given it a 2 for a variety of reasons, I'm going to give it a bonus mark of 1 because of the citation probe rowing, which is a thing I didn't know before. So thank you for teaching me. So it's a 3.
John?
What we've learned is we can't trust the reliability of any of Lara's judgments. It's all up to math, depending on what's going on. I'm going to go with my last metaphor of the day. It's off the tee box right down the middle of the fairway. It's a 3. I'm surprised with a scoping review ends with 20 papers. So was it the right type of synthesis? That's weird. Anyway.
Fair point. I'm going to give it a 3 as well. I think the methods were, quote, fine. They were adequate for the study and not elaborate. Okay, so the impact of this paper, are you going to use this paper? I'm really curious. So let's do the same order. Linda, Lara, John, impact.
I'm not sure. I think it's impactful in ways that we have talked about earlier, but not necessarily for author development. I did like the diagram, but I think it is much more generalizable and can be used. And it probably shows, as I read from that little piece that I picked out, that training authors is part of a package and probably needs to be bundled with training people how to think about a research question and how to do the right methods, et cetera, et cetera. So it gets a 3.
I'll give it a 3 as well. I'm not going to use this necessarily. There's nothing here for me to take away from it per se. But it's a contribution. 3.
I'm going to give it a shoulder shrug. It's going to get a 2. I don't think I'm going to use it. If you want to learn how to write, you've missed all the other literature about how to write commentaries and editorials, etc. If you want to learn how to become a researcher, you've missed all the important parts about how to do the research. And so it gets so narrow, I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, but
Okay,
John, it's not for people who want to learn how to write or how to do research. It's for faculty developers who want to teach people how to write. It's one level up.
So I would use this paper for somebody who wants a research project and say, hey, there's a body of literature here that's heterogeneous and maybe there's a gap you want to fill. Maybe they want to do a program eval. And I might use this for a committee that's debating about how to help in this domain, and it'll just be a stimulus in both cases. So I give it a 3. So there you have it. There's our publication by Cameron et al. It's from Academic Medicine in January. Thanks so much for listening to the Papers podcast. We love to have you here. Please write to us when we get an email address. We're recording this before the launch.
More on that to come.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you later.
You've been listening to the Papers podcast. We hope we made you just slightly smarter. The podcast is a production of the Unit for Teaching and Learning at the Karolinska Institutet. The executive producer today was my friend Teresa Sörö. The technical producer today was Samuel Lundberg. You can learn more about the Papers podcast and contact us at www.thepaperspodcast.com. Thank you for listening, everybody, and thank you for all you do. Take care.